But Andrew Weissmann, let me go first to you with your experience in the FBI and what we just listened to.
Well, in many ways, it is the blueprint that was set in the Boston bombing case, where you have this outreach to the public and the dissemination of information. It was striking to me that that was essentially the purpose of the press conference, was to get that out there to the public so that anybody with information about what he looks like, his T-shirt, his cap, his shoes, his backpack, all of that is something that they're looking for leads, and that obviously is something that the public can and should do. I did want to make a reference to something that people might not know about, because there's been a lot of reporting about having found the gun. And I want to make sure people understand, in this country, it can be very, very difficult to trace a gun to a perpetrator. Unlike a car, where when you have a car, we can know from soup to nuts when it came off the lot and every single owner who had it. That is prohibited in this country. So you can have
for guns, it's prohibited.
For guns, it is prohibited. You can figure out when the gun was manufactured, but it is very hit and miss if you can trace who has owned it. There are all sorts of loopholes. And so just having found the gun, it obviously can be useful. There can be information there. But it is not the case that there is a record in the same way that you would have for the VIN, the vehicle identification number, for a car, where you know exactly from person to person to person. So I just want to make sure people understand, because of the laws in this country, this investigation, or investigations like it, don't have necessarily the tools that you might have in other countries to do that kind of tracing.
Ken Dilanian, we're continuing to run the video that was just released, which in effect was the entire purpose of this press briefing, was really just to release this video that they have been, obviously has been in their possession for quite a while. They were ready to do this apparently much earlier in the day today. Any indication of why this was delayed so long, given, as Andrew says, they wanted to get this information out to the public? They've had it for quite a while. The public could have seen this many, many, many hours ago.
That's right, Lawrence. Well, one reason was stated fairly explicitly by Utah officials hours ago, which is that they were waiting for Kash Patel, the FBI director, and Dan Bongino, his deputy, to land in the FBI jet so that they could attend this news conference, and where they didn't speak and they stood in the background. And there's also, it's a bit perplexing because they did say earlier in the day that they were going to have a briefing at around 2:45 p.m. and then they canceled that, citing rapid developments in the case, which led a lot of people to think that they were closing in on a suspect. But then you had Bo Mason, the head of the Utah Department of Public Safety, tell NBC's Morgan Chesky tonight that they have no idea. He used those words: "We have no idea the identity or the location of the suspect. Don't know whether the suspect is still in the area or has fled hundreds of miles away." And you know, that's not a failure. I mean, these are difficult investigations. Andrew cited the Boston Marathon bombing. You can also think about the Luigi Mangione case. It took them 5 days to arrest Mangione, and only after help from the public, after a McDonald's worker spotted him based on a photo. And that's exactly what they're hoping for in this case. Unfortunately, the photos of his face are not terribly clear. But it just does show that despite all the video evidence they've collected, all the presumably the cell phone location evidence they've gotten, and the tips they've gotten from the public, they really don't seem to have made much progress in figuring out who this person is and where they are. I mean, when law enforcement agents start to just telling you the number of interviews they've done and how many agencies are responding, you know they don't really have very much to say of substance. And I wanted to make one other point, Lawrence, which is the governor said very clearly, the governor of Utah, that Russia and China are spreading disinformation about this situation, which they often do, as Andrew well knows, in mass shootings and other kinds of instances of controversy and mass violence in the United States. The thing that the public needs to know about that is that this Justice Department and this FBI disbanded the Foreign Influence Task Force, whose job was to try to combat that malign foreign influence and to investigate it and then to counter it. They've done away with it. They're not, the U.S. government is not doing that mission anymore, in part because Donald Trump didn't like the things they did about Russia, apparently. So it's really rather remarkable to see that governor of Utah lament the fact that our foreign adversaries are trying to exploit this situation while the FBI director is standing behind him, knowing that they have done away with the task forces that whose job was to attack that problem.
Joined now by Jim Kavanaugh, former ATF special agent in charge. Jim, what did you learn in that press briefing?
Well, I think the only thing that they told us new was the head of the troopers. He showed us the video of the killer egressing the roof, dropping down, looked like he had a rifle in a bag, hustles across the green there and then starts walking across the road and then dumps the rifle in the wooded area. So we'd never seen that video. And then, of course, the still pictures, Lawrence, that are on the staircase, they're pretty good. But it seems to me, I can't tell from what they said. Is that from a video? If you have a video of that, release the video, because if you don't know who this guy is, you really need the help. Or if you have better still pictures of his face coming up that stairwell, get those out too. At this point, it's not going to hurt you to release more video and more stills. Just get it all out there. I think one thing we got to contend with, and the commanders need to contend with, this guy may not be local to, Orem, Utah. He could very well be a traveler who stalked Mr. Kirk, come from far, another state or something to do this. He doesn't have to be a local person. So he could very well have traveled to commit his assassination. So as far as the press conference to be delayed, I've seen this happen so many times. It's always delayed. The governor has to get there, or the mayor, or a senator, or somebody. And we've waited and stood for hours on end for, political leaders to get there. Now, they need to get there. I understand that. They need to be speaking because they're the leadership. But sometimes that's just a reason that those pressers are delayed. And I think it's often better to just let the police have their press conference and put out their information, and then the political leadership can have theirs. But I'd say this was delayed because of probably the director of the FBI not being there, and getting there. And he didn't speak, so I don't really know why they delayed it. They missed an opportunity, I think, to emphasize the $100,000 reward more, especially because they don't have a clue who this person is, and the person may be a traveler. So you want to reach the widest audience you can. You want to push that money out as best you can and get those photographs and videos out as much as you can. This is your opportunity while the nation is paying attention. Lawrence?
Jim, the governor did say, quote, a lot of forensic evidence is being processed. Based on what we know now, the limited information we know now, what might that evidence be?
It's going to be fingerprints, DNA from the rifle, from the towel that surrounded the rifle, probably sweat DNA. It's going to be DNA from touch on the rifle. Fingerprints, they'll be large and heavy on fingerprints on the FBI lab, on the cartridges that are inside the magazine of the 30-06, the unspent cartridges that the killer probably loaded, before he even wiped it down. So that's a good place to find them. So there's a lot of evidence to be found there. There's also the trace of the gun, and that may still be ongoing with ATF agents trying to run that down. The gun could have been sold retail, Lawrence, years ago, and they're trying to run it down to a purchaser. That can sometimes produce fruitful leads. There's got to be other stuff out there. There's got to be other cameras that were at the scene from citizens. I think they're missing some opportunities. Just when they showed that video, they should be saying, if this is you in the red car that's driving out right after the shooting, and you're driving out right here in this red vehicle, call us. We want to talk to you. Maybe you can tell us something. I mean, there's so many people in that video that they can, encourage to come in and tell us something. Now, maybe they've interviewed them already, but I'm just saying, reach out, enlist the support of all the citizens because they all want to be on your side. It's everybody in the police versus the assassin. And that's how you got to leverage it so you can get the information. It'll pay off. I would just close with this. They're going to catch him because there's going to be plenty of DNA, fingerprints, hair on that rifle, or they'll trace it to him, and they're going to have it. Then they may just need his identity. This is not a guy with a long criminal record, probably, or this is not some special operations guy. It doesn't take a lot of talent to do what he did. So they'll be able to catch him once they have the fingerprints, DNA. Then they just got to get the suspect. Once they match that, it'll be an arrest.
Ken Delaney, I want to pick up a point Jim just said about it doesn't take a lot of talent to do this. NBC News reporting today, according to multiple firearms experts, said the weaponry available today would allow even a novice shooter to pull off such a hit. What have you been finding on that, Ken?
Well, yeah, that's right. So this is not necessarily the work of a military trained sniper. This is something, what most experts say is this is something that anyone proficient with a rifle who's been on the range a few times, this is a shot that they could make. And this was not an assault rifle, not an AR style rifle, which we so often see in these kinds of attacks. This was a bolt action rifle. That's a more than 100-year-old design that's never been banned in this country. But yet it did devastating damage. It's just also a reminder that rifles do horrible damage to the human body. I mean, had this attack been mounted with a handgun, that shot couldn't have been made from that distance. And, Charlie Kirk had security around him. So that perhaps this attack wouldn't have been possible. With a rifle, it was possible. But again, it didn't require, according to experts, didn't require military training, just required basic proficiency.